Hello and welcome everyone, this is Type V3 and today we're taking a look at the Fansproject WB002 Steel Core, the second entry into their Warbot series of transforming figures. But first, let's get one thing straight. This set is actually comprised of two robots. Opening the cockpit reveals a small minicon by the name of Steel and thus leaving the name of Core to the vehicle itself. Well, technically it's named Core-er, but that doesn't really roll off the tongue quite nicely, so I'll just refer to him as Core. Anyways, Steel is a minicon who's been giving a surprising amount of attention for his size. Aside from his two-tone paint scheme, he's got silver accents, red eyes, and plenty of mold detailing. He stands at about the height you'd expect from other minicons or Power Masters, and that's really all there is to him, no accessories or weapons otherwise. Steel's got a surprising amount of articulation. The head's on a nice ball joint that can go anywhere because the transformation can look up a lot, but it is a very tight ball joint, so be careful of that. The shoulders are on ball joints, and the elbow has a joint, but it's kind of meaningless because of this huge armor plate here, so I tend to keep them straight. Hips ball jointed, and then the knee has a joint. So for his size, he has a lot of cool jointed features. They're ultimately meaningless, but I like that Fansproject went all the way with this one anyways. Moving over, Core's got a nice cold color palette that's comprised of solid blue and grays, mixed with some nice red highlights and bright yellow headlights. There's a lot of small and intricate detailing throughout the figure, and nothing about the overall design seems to have been overlooked. Having said that, when I take a step back, it's hard to give an actual judgment of the concept of this ride. Exhaust stacks from the engine and the top of the truck, along with the vivid green cockpit, look cool, but the small wheels and very empty-looking rear end lead to a confusing design. Not quite car or truck, somewhere in between Cybertronian and Earth-based, it's almost like a beautiful mess. Almost. Above all, though, he feels incomplete. It's like he seems to be missing something. A trailer, perhaps? In terms of overall mass, Core sizes up nicely with other Voyager-class figures, but because he's so short, he could easily be mistaken for a large deluxe instead. He also comes with this green accessory whose purpose is only seen in robot mode, but there's no way to store it in this alt mode. Yeah, you can definitely jam it into some gap or crevice, but there's no real way of keeping it securely attached or stable. Of course, now that I've shown you this accessory, you'll probably want to know more about it. So let's kick this review into stage 2 and start the transformation. Conceptually, Core's transformation is incredibly simple. All you're really doing is separating each of the limbs from the core of the figure and then dealing with minor movements to finish up. He's held together by numerous tabs, which I wasn't a fan of, and the ratcheting pelvis joint is scarily tight. Push hard. Transforming Steel is simple too. Just make sure you turn his head around before folding it down. After that, just insert, push, and you've got yourself a Steel Core. At this point, it should be no surprise to anyone that Steel Core's design is mostly comprised of harsh angles and chunky blocks. But because he's not a figure that's based on any one character in particular, I think that Fansproject have achieved a look that will appeal to everyone. His proportions and silhouette look great too. He manages to look tough and hardened, but not so overwhelmingly huge that he's perceived as an idiot. The head sculpt is definitely one of my favorites. It's expressionless and neutral, and the neon green eyes outlined in the black give it that little bit extra. I even like how Steel is a slightly brighter shade of blue. It just helps to mix up the look a little. What's surprising is just how much detail went into the design of Steel Core's backside. There are no hollow spots here. Also, for those with sharp eyes, you'll definitely find many little details that have been inspired by other, more famous robots. After closing the missile pod, Steel Core has an awesome ball-jointed head. Can move in almost any direction, and it is easily accessible. I really like that. The shoulders are super articulated. First, there's an open ball jointed hinge right here, so you can just definitely go around. Then on the bottom of the shoulder, or the upper bicep, there's a ball joint that comes up, and then there's another hinge that can move along without it, so really cool there. There's also a swivel there. The elbows are a bit limited. I mean, they can only barely bend 90 degrees, and there is no wrist articulation, so that's a real disappointment, the wrist articulation. As for his waist, he does have a waist joint and an ab crunch, but his whole piece is locked together by this here, so if you unhook it, then you can access it, and it can twist, and it can do a crunch, but because it's located at the front here, it leads to some really awkward looking poses, so I never really use it, and it is also weird how it opens up his entire backside. I mean, you can pull this down to cover it, but it doesn't really help all too much. Who knows, though. I'm glad they did put it in, but it isn't really that accessible. The hips are on a ball joint, those are nice. What I like though is that the thigh swivel is here and it covers up the ball jointed attachment, so I've always liked that design, that's really cool. Double jointed knees for all your crazy knee poses, and the ankles and foot are his real winner right here. Nicely ball jointed, full tilt in any direction. The heel can sort of articulate, and then there's a huge toe joint, so that is really cool. Can't go wrong with that thing. Now, while Steel Core doesn't come with many accessories, the one that he has is great. Designed as a trailer hitch in vehicle mode, this piece can easily transform into a blaster. Take it a step further by adding on that green bladed piece, and now you have his melee weapon. Granted, it does look like a nail gun, but the transformation is still cool nonetheless. Also, while I didn't show it, this weapon never has to leave Steel Core's hand, as that's where it stores in his alt mode. Pretty nifty. The figure also comes with this Warbot Correlation book, haha, nice pun, but there's a comic in here, and although the colors are nice and vivid, the art isn't that great, and neither is the narrative. In fact, I wouldn't even call this a narrative, there's just a bunch of words in here, so I don't know, it's whatever. I mean, it's nice, but Fansproject, just stick to making cool figures. Your narratives we can live without. As for the instructions, these are brilliant, these are awesome, nice, vivid pictures, and very easy to learn instructions. In fact, these instructions kind of make it seem like the transformation's a lot more confusing than it needs to be, so good going on you guys there, but yeah, this book's alright, whatever. Fansproject's release of this figure is definitely fascinating. For a third-party company to release a toy that carries no ties whatsoever to the Transformers universe is definitely bold, as interest in this piece will undoubtedly be low. However, I'd argue that the fact that he carries no fiction behind him just adds to the mystique of the character and makes him more appealing. Well, that and the fact that he's really just a damn good toy. Of course, Steel Core isn't perfect. It's obvious that more design focus went into the robot mode and left him with a mess of a vehicle mode. The Power Master or Breastmaster gimmick, while fun, doesn't actually do anything, and if I were to nitpick a little harder, I would have preferred for Core to have Steel's color scheme and vice versa. Overall, while Steel Core definitely doesn't do anything mind-blowing, everything that he does brilliantly. To date, this is easily Fansproject's best standalone figure, and I'd even argue their best product yet. Although, at the time of this recording, I still don't own a City Commander set. Also, this is the first third-party release that actually feels comparable to an official Hasbro or Takara figure, from the materials used to the way certain parts were engineered to pop off to avoid any permanent damage. Yes, his $70 price tag may seem steep, but when you compare that to what other rival third-party companies have to offer for the same price, this figure feels like quite a steal. Ultimately, if you really can't get behind the idea of picking up a third-party Transformer that isn't an homage to a G1 character, then that's a perfectly good reason to skip this release. However, if I've managed to pique your interest even slightly, then seriously try and get a hold of him. I guarantee you won't be disappointed, especially if you're a fan of toy engineering. And if you really don't like the vehicle mode, well, Fansproject has teased something to alleviate that issue. In fact, there's even a different color scheme on the way. Anyways, this has been Type V3. Thank you for watching, and I hope to see more original third-party pieces in the future, because Steel Core is proof that a company's best work will always come out of a product in which they have full control of their creativity.